Leveraging.
Now, when you speak,
And that's why you don't trust the mute button.
Everything we said before this was not recorded.
Yeah.
So everybody start all over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back from my brief introduction, thank you everybody for coming today. I'm very grateful that we're joined today by Liz Stevens, CEO of DBS Cyber. Anybody who watches this video after the fact, like Linda had told everybody in the room, please do share with others. We'd love to have new speakers. If you're happen to be a sponsor opportunity for us, we'd love to have any sponsorship. Because we're trying to revitalize something that COVID kind of killed off for a while, but we'd love to have active again. Our Lost Nashville chapter is near and dear to my heart. That's why I'm grateful that Liz is here. Liz, thank you for your service. We're going to love to hear about the Cyber Manifesto today and all that DBS Cyber may be able to offer us.
You're
Thank
the
you.
best, and thank you for your support. Hello, everyone. You might not have met me before, but my name is Elizabeth Stevens. I'm the founder and CE/TO for a company called DBS Cyber. Delta Bravo Sierra, for those of you who do the lingo, stands for Dina, Bailey, and Samantha. Those are my three littles. I was geriatric, according to the military, when I was pregnant. So DBS Cyber is about protecting families. What that means is that right now, there is, regardless of how you look at it, there are so many threats, so many things that are coming at children today by means of technology, whether it's cyber actors, whether it's predators, whether it's just too much information or bad content, whether it's cyberbullying or it's them accidentally giving away all the codes to their parents' stuff, right? All of these things, and they're not prepared for it. Why? Because we weren't prepared for it. And so DBS Cyber uses technology, yes, AI, I'm supposed to say that as well, but good old fashioned workflow and military intelligence to establish three main products. One, which is Genevieve. It's a platform that's meant to protect kids from things on the internet. We believe in providing the digital guardianship, and that's what Genevieve is. Platypus, which is our proactive, high-speed, low-drag, cyber risk, proactive, AI-powered risk assessment platform. What that does is, for some of you that follow me on LinkedIn, allows me to tell you what's going to happen before the White House and the FBI can tell you that it happened. I say that in jest because right now, if you're not being proactive, you're far behind. And that's what Platypus is about. But our bread and butter, our core is about the kids, cyber kids. And that is our way of integrating cybersecurity into everything kids get to do in a language that's for them, by them, from the ages of as soon as they can hold an iPad, which is pretty young, to grandma and grandpa who are supposed to be sitting there watching them do the things that they do and learning at the same time. And that is our bread and butter. So that is what DBS Cyber is about. I am a Marine, former Marine, for those of you that don't speak Marine, retired. I spent 7 years at Microsoft doing all kinds of crazy stuff that they probably shouldn't allow me to do, but you know, hey, it is what it is. And my passion for this is not just about like what the business is or what's trendy or fun. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons and serving until I can't serve anymore. That's what OWASP is about. That's what I think cybersecurity is about. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. We talk about digital safeguards. So that all being said, let me see if I get my computer back up running. Right slide. So imagine walking up to your water faucets one day and you go to turn them on, nothing happens, no water, no pressure, no noise. Then you turn on the news and you see that like kids can't go to school because the water's not working there. No water at the hospital, so they can't sanitize their tools. Chaos, pandemonium, right? Now, I know I come off as a disaster story or horror movie, but that's not what I'm saying right now. This sounds like a worst case scenario, but it's not a worst case scenario. This is what can and has happened even in Nashville today. Now, this kind of threat, this kind of thing in the past could have been by some kind of bomb, people doing things that they shouldn't do, physical threats. But the truth is today, especially with what we've seen in healthcare, doesn't take a physical actor or physical action to make these things happen. So water is important. Critical infrastructure is important. And in the age that we're in now, with relentless and creative, and I shouldn't be as excited about them being creative, threat actors, moving faster than we're able to think about them moving, we cannot continue to do the same thing that we've done in the past. Yes, the Marine just said, don't keep banging your head up against the wall. We've got to be smarter. The Cyber Risk Manifesto, and I know some of you may not have seen it, should be able to maybe scan that QR code since it's not up there, but you should be able to get to it from that QR code if you haven't seen it. If you'd like to download a copy, you can go to www.dbscyber.com, look for the manifesto. You get a download, it's free. It is not a sales tool. It is not an effort or a way to get you to buy my services. It's actually a call to action. We cannot afford to be this vulnerable anymore. Period. We need a new playbook. That means all of us. Cyber securers, physical securers, business, risk, project managers. And that new playbook is the Cyber Risk Manifesto. What it does is it attempts to give what I would call a balanced commentary about some of the things that we need to be doing as a community, not just commercial, not just consumer, but all of us together. The principles there: proactive risk management, intelligence-driven actions, the integration of cybersecurity practices into everything we do, as well as, continuous process improvement. I think I said cooler up here with continuous evolution and learning. And then full and transparent collaboration. Those principles, yes, they may sound very much like something a Marine would say. Definitely principles that a program manager would say, business manager would say, and a cyber defender would say. So I can tell you, right now, we're not doing this as a community. We're not doing this as a business culture, and we're definitely just barely trying to get there at this point to compliment the government in order to get ahead of the bad guys. But the only way we're going to be able to do this in mass, the only way we're going to even take a little bit out of the speed of those that are coming at us, is to do this and to do this now and to do it together. There are approximately 4 million kids who just got out of school a couple weeks ago and are now on devices. Some people reported early in the summer in around the Tennessee area about the rising costs and the rising spend from electrical, right? A lot of people were like, oh, it's because of the heat. It wasn't the heat at that point. Our digital footprint is a carbon footprint. You take 4 million of anybody and hand them iPads that are plugged into something, that is significant. Now, some would say, great, that's awesome. But guess what? That also means that there are 4 million new nodes that the bad guys and gals and their bots and the script kiddies and the hacktivists can now use against us. And I do mean us, because even if they're ransoming HCA, or they're shutting down Microsoft, or they're sticking it to the man, although I probably should stop doing that at this point. The people that are getting hurt are us. And so I say, why keep doing the thing that we've always been doing? Why not take a step up and let us defend ourselves and become cyber warriors and teach our kids to be cyber warriors and digital guardians ourselves? That's what this is about. So today, when I talk about the Cyber Risk Manifesto, I want to talk about how do you protect yourself? This is just one of the many things that we should already know how to do, and many of you do, but it's worth talking about. We do live in Nashville, as you can imagine. I did say Marine. I may or may not have been a strategic plan, but this map should look familiar to you. One of the things that align to the Cyber Risk Manifesto from proactive defense perspective is tabletop exercises, right? This is one thing you can do to ensure your digital resilience. We talk about Nashville because that's where we are. Water is not just a utility bill. It is quite literally the life's blood. We talked about how hospitals, schools, businesses, all would be affected if the water went down. Imagine like the economic impacts if Nashville, Tennessee couldn't provide water to its tourists, to its people, to its disadvantaged for even a day. Disease outbreaks, because you need clean water. Medical emergencies, because you need clean water. Let's not forget, how about you need water to fight fires? You also need water to cool certain critical infrastructure systems. And we got a couple of them in Tennessee. All of those things are critical. And we didn't even touch on what that means for sanitation, right? And as you think about what happens and what could happen, how do you prepare yourself? According to the manifesto, it says, think about the things that are hazards to you and start planning around. So a tabletop exercise aligns quite specifically to proactive risk management. I know it sounds super smart, but not Air Force Marine. The tabletop exercise, by thinking about the thing that's most dangerous to you, not waiting for the bad guys or gals to strike, not waiting for the failure to happen, that means that you're ahead of the disaster. That means that when that scenario hits you, you've already talked through all of the things you need to do for resilience. You've talked about the things that you need to proactively mitigate. Those would be called vulnerabilities. You've talked about the effect to the business, you've talked about the effect to your customer, and you've talked about the effect to the whole community. Those are the things that you would be doing if you bought into the Cyber Risk Manifesto. So I love being theoretical. See that add more text is still up there, and I can't believe I missed that, but that is okay. I'm not just gonna like talk about this. I'm actually gonna walk you guys through a tabletop exercise. Okay, so everybody's got to participate, play parts and stuff like that. So does everybody know what a tabletop exercise is? Anybody? Those of us, it's okay. So you can say it's cool. Tabletop exercise. Cutely abbreviated TTX. It's basically a war game. I think you say that in the South. It's basically a war game, a simulation of a thing that could happen. And then as we walk through that war game, each one of the people that are participants will play a role that has responsibilities and actions during that war game. So in this example, you'll see, since you can do a tabletop exercise on anything. How to get out of your house, what happens if the power goes down. In this case, we're talking about water, cyber water attack, which ironically doesn't look any different than a normal water attack. There's treasury stuff, there's any number of things. You can customize them. It's basically, you're letting your imagination go to the worst place it can possibly go, and then trying to understand how you're going to react to it. Is that helpful? Does anybody disagree with that definition?
Pretend walk through with that.
Got it. Made it sound so much less. Okay, I got my eye on you. But by doing this as a group, what we do is we actually create scenarios and a shared reality so that we can step forward from when the thing actually happens to you. So instead of having ideas and going, oh, I think we would do this, you'll be able to go, oh, okay, last time when I was there, we called them. Does that actually happen? Well, let's call them and find out. And then you'll already test your processes and you'll know in advance whether or not you need to fix them, whether or not the processes themselves are a vulnerability, or whether or not you need to anticipate calling in for help immediately as soon as you think something's going to happen. So this particular exercise is going to simulate a ransomware attack. Typically a TTX is about this thick. So it's about 30 pages, but I'm thorough. There's like 3 different scenarios in here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do a short one. We're going to go with ransomware. But as we delve into the attack, right? You're gonna ask questions like, was it a phishing email or was it insider threat? Was it a 0-day? Was it what caused the thing? But really, that's not really even important. What's important to you is whether or not your systems are gonna work and that the systems that you expect to give you that information actually work to give you that information. And then how your partners in crime, generally across the business, say they're gonna react as opposed to how they're actually gonna react. And then you can work through that. So any questions so far? I think I don't want it. Any questions on that? Okay, so this is a scenario. So it is a worst case scenario, but it's just a glimpse of like what could potentially happen. For those of you that were here during the AT&T building bombing, that was quite literally the most effective isolation of communication in the US in probably the last decade, although we definitely did not report it that way. This example here is at 0 hour. So the attack just kind of happens. Right now you all work, we'll just say you're all the people that you are, but you're working for the water company. Okay. So we'll go through the attack. We'll talk about kind of how it happened. We've got the infection will spread. Chaos will be unleashed. So like it's much more active when I'm doing this for real because it's part of the game. Get to play somebody that looks like a human. And then the stakes are obviously high as we continue to talk about it, right? So that's how the scenario will unfold for you. As we walk through the scenario, the intent is for us to test your incident response plans, to identify any weaknesses and technically weaknesses, vulnerabilities, or strengths in your people, process, and tools, and then prepare for like the things that you don't want to prepare for, you don't want to think will happen, so that when they do happen, you can act swiftly and you'll have already been scared by the tabletop exercise, so you're not scared anymore. It's called the effective use of trauma. Okay, so here is our tabletop exercise. I already told you, so, just gonna read it. That's what you're supposed to do. So, a ransomware variant specifically designed to target industrial control systems infiltrates the supervisory control and data acquisition network responsible, that's straight up for those of us that speak acronyms, that is responsible for managing water treatment and distribution processes. Critical control systems are encrypted, and ransom demands issued, threatening to disrupt water services and potentially manipulate water treatment parameters if they're not paid. Does that sound real to anyone?
Yeah, sounds a lot like the, whatever the meat processing plant was that compromised just a couple years ago.
So you talked about the impacts, right? You've lost water. You potentially lost the process to treat the water. You don't have access to the controls, so you don't know what the temperatures look like. Potentially none of your emergency functions actually will work. Public panic ensues. Most of the kids can't go to school and now they're all home and you're working hybrid. And then best and worst case scenario, then the media starts to report that like the water's poison. And it's all Assurion's fault. They do things, right? So here
Not
you're
your insurance.
yeah.
Wouldn't be far off from the way the news is about.
It's a strange world we're living right now. So our objectives, you're gonna assess the water company's ability to detect and isolate the ransomware attack on the network. You're gonna evaluate the emergency response protocols. Short, quick summary, I'm gonna ask you questions, it'll be okay. You're gonna determine strategies for restoring the functionality of the systems. And then you're gonna analyze the impact on the water quality. And then coordinate, this is my favorite part, coordinate communication with the city, the community, and officials. Okay, is everybody ready for this? Like, everybody needs to be shaking hands and like, hey, it's about to go down. Because that's just one of the scenarios, right? Okay, so. Sophisticated, core systems, water disruption. What are we thinking right now?
containment.
I like containment. That was awfully calm. What about, tell me a little bit about containment.
Well, we know we got a malicious email, so something bad happened to the IT network, which made its way over to the OT network, so. We know we have a lot of privilege escalation going on, and we need to contain this, so we just shut down the OT network, all our IT admins trying to triage it. Probably don't even realize that they're on a network that's compromised too. So it's gonna be a pain, but we gotta contain it.
I like what you said there. Go ahead.
It's in the same vein as containment. I think my first concern is a lot less about the technology, IT or OT of my particular water company and more of the safety of the people who we serve. I'd want to know, are any systems that control the safety or like chemicals that may be in the water that we want to be there or not? Can these systems be abused by whatever has been compromised here?
Excellent.
We don't want the water to be poisoned, like the news would have been reporting on.
Yes, and then we asked, how does the news know already? How do they know? Okay, so first thing that you're thinking is we gotta contain it. Who is we?
The entire enterprise. This is all hands on deck.
So Metro Water Supply, known for their SWAT-like tactics, agility, and technical know-how, is going to move at what pace?
Basically. But you probably call Dragos.
Yeah. So the first thing they're probably gonna do is call the vendors, right? Technically, well, actually, right now, I think we're in a heightened alert level. So people should be watching. How do they even know that the water is, like, how do they know they've been ransomed, right? Like, it's just because they just saw the big goblin pop up on the screen that says, you've been ransomed, right? So who do they even, do they have a SOC or do they have a security operations center? Are they connected to the cyber SWAT team of Metro, Nashville, and Davidson County? It doesn't exist.
Even if they're not, is there a central shut off to at least stop the bleeding from the central hub so that until the wells run dry, if you will, there's good water until it all, of course, is gone?
And guess what? TVA made sure that this entire state is quite the location if you were to decide to disrupt some water or nuclear power plants in the area.
Oak Ridge is not too far from here.
Yep, Red Dawn all over again. So yes, some of us would say first thing we gotta do is continue, right? It's worse than that right now. That's why we're talking about the manifesto. It's so much worse than that right now. This is Metro Water. First, most of that equipment is OT and ICS. It hasn't been updated. It hasn't been validated, verified. We do know they have a bunch of stuff, but like they are not established in the tech way. So most of this is going to be someone's going to go down to a server. And for those who don't know, that's the stuff is boxes like here to here, and they got lots of wires coming out, different colors, never aligned. And they're just going to go whoop. They won't be able to do that because it's probably in a leased data center somewhere. Right? So again, we're back to what are you going to do? What is happening? Right? So containment's like the stakes are high, but containment is a good instinct. How do we detect it? Right? Again, we're like, oh, we got to contain it. We got to give it the network guys. We got to find out what they're doing. Do we even know if they're using SCADA? They probably are. Okay, I'm just trying to. Like, there's not a lot of investment, especially in this part of the country. We're still considered rural. The critical infrastructure itself, because of the great work during the Tennessee Valley Authority Stand Up and Push, has been pretty solid. So there hasn't been a need to invest here, right? There hasn't been a demand signal that pushed that. So how do we detect and assess the threat? Typically, someone reports that the water's out, right? So now that the water's out, it's a ransomware attack. What's the first thing an IT person's gonna say to the data center tech when they say, hey, it's a ransomware attack? How do you know? How do you know it's a ransomware attack, right? And the data center tech's gonna be like, this expletive. The goblin's on the screen, asking for money, right? So now you gotta validate, right? Well, how are you validating that? Same problem, right? And then who are they gonna tell? They'll probably call, actually here, they'll probably call Tennessee Bureau of TBI. That doesn't sound right, but I think that's it, right? They'll call the FBI of Tennessee, right? We've got a CISA department head, I think somewhere in Middle Tennessee, but they're not first responders, right? Do we have anybody here that we can call if something like this happens? We don't, that's the answer. It's not a trick question, really, just not, okay.
Sure happens.
It's- You know, I'm just saying, you call police. What are they gonna do? Call the FBI? Okay, so containment and response. See, skip straight to it. That's what I'm doing here. Red team, huh? Yeah, okay. This is what people do. It's cool. Time for all times. How do we respond? Okay, what type of immediate actions do we take to isolate the affected system? So now we're inside I'll go back to the picture. Well, actually, before I do that, does anybody actually understand what that SCADA diagram was that I put up there before? No, okay, it's fine.
Similar.
Yeah, it's funny for a reason. Now people will go back and look at that slide, but it is what it is. So what immediate actions did we take from containment response, right? So we are assuming right now that it's a redundant system on site as well as cloud backup servers. Cloud backup servers, right? We've got vendors that monitor our SOC. We're probably using Microsoft something. Yep. So who do we call? What are the immediate action steps? So your cloud, so you're a hybrid environment, you've got on-prem and you've got in the cloud. You've got a vendor who provides your SOC, your security operations center. Mind you, they didn't tell you that you were being ransomed, but you have this. What do you do? Who do you call first?
Instead of redundant, we flip over to maintain service availability, but we would flip over to the redundant stack so that no service is interrupted.
Love it.
Use the compromised stack for triage and investigation.
Love it. So we up-leveled Metro's water staff there, but I like,
Okay.
you brought them up with it. I like it, I like it. So that's awesome, right? Catch, there's gotta be a redundant system, right? By law, there's supposed to be a redundant system that applies to physical systems. But I'm gonna walk with they should have a redundant backup system. So you roll to the backup, but the backup's compromised too, because why? Privileged access. So what do we do now? Does anybody, who disagrees that we should roll to the backup system? Does anybody disagree?
I'll just switch to manual. I'm gonna have people on the ground at the key locations for everything. It's all manual valves. I'm gonna turn off all the computer controls.
Would that be a first step if you didn't know that your backup was compromised?
I would deploy them. I may not turn off the electronics, but I would have them all deployed first.
There.
So the second the technology fails, we're not gonna have a water disruption because people will sit there and turn the valves and manually drop chlorine tablets in the pools and stuff like that.
I like it.
So what did he just do? He did not crash the scenario. What did he just do?
Sorry.
Implemented the human backup plan.
Boom. We haven't invested in the cyber stuff. We haven't invested in the tech stuff, but we still got the people, right? Deploy your resources because they're the ones you have. Immediate action steps, isolate the issue. If the issue is that you cannot control the valves, what do? You go control the valves, right? Did anybody, I know why you did. Does anybody think, like, there's certain things that we do, cognitive bias or cognitive dissonance, recency bias, any kind of things, all number of things, because of the way that the brain works, right? Why didn't anybody just go say, let's just go flip the valves?
We made it more complicated, I guess, thought about it too much.
Well, this is how we do it today, right?
That technology has replaced people.
People's thought.
Yeah,
Sometimes these attacks can result in physical damage to the actual, OT environment.
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
I'm the type of, I imagine that the type of bad guy that I would be working with, red teamer, would only use methods that would allow me to affect the physical. Controllers, data keys, anything that can go up or down. Best thing, Chernobyl, there's two others, I can't remember. So a couple of different disasters were caused not by like the systems being tricked into doing the thing, but by making the systems read a single piece of data, like a thermometer. This is the best one ever. So the system is seeing the temperatures flip 100 degrees in milliseconds, right? Can't make this one up. This one I actually did myself. You go in, people are looking at the monitors and they're like, huh, that temperature is erratic. And you go, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that the temperature in that room is going from 100 to 200 degrees in less than a second. And so then you take off your glasses and you're like, laws of physics much? But nobody checks that system because they're like, it's a dumb system. But it's a key indicator because now all of your systems are flapping. If you want to cause an arc flash, that's the way to do it. So this is, again, are we asking ourselves, next time I'll do like what happens when something happens at your house store, because these get pretty hectic, right? The Cyber Risk Manifesto isn't actually about like, buy this tool, do this thing. It's about remembering that now in the time of like Asimov's Nexus, yes, I'm a geek, but I also said I was old. Like this period of time where when some of us were young, we were imagining like, ooh, I wonder if I'm gonna be alive then. It's actually now. Like we're on the cusp of so much technological advancement that we are hazarded because we're not thinking about this piece of technology, right? And after COVID, we should all be thinking about this piece of technology, right? That's why the manifesto is about, hey, don't stop doing the things that we do. It's not about what you have and how you do it. It's about the fact that you're thinking about it. Because we can keep doing the old things over and over again and get the same response and then automate it and get the same response faster. Or we can take charge. I'm gonna do it anyway. Take charge of yourself and your posts and carry out the plan of the day and do it like a boss, which isn't that hard for us because all we're saying is it's not that difficult. We've spent so many years having people tell us that if you're not in this place, on this coast, in this area, you don't know enough. I guarantee you, Tennessee is like the home of so many things, militia included. But some of the most ingenuitive advancements, like the Browning automatic rifle, right? That's amazing. Some of the things we do with moonshine and music. I'm just saying, okay? So here's what we're saying. The brain trust is you guys, all of us, right? The manifesto says, do these things, a tabletop exercise. It sounds simple and we're literally doing it now, but now you're gonna start thinking about it. So next time I won't be able to tell the same jokes. This is what it aligns to. And I'll talk about it a little bit more too, but what are our options for restoring the water? We talked about it, straight to the answer. It would have taken, who remembers solar winds? The first one, or the third one. Which one was Nobelian? I can't think, they're all like flowing, right? So when that happened the first time, right? Everyone's like, what's going on? What's going on? We're like, can we just lock out all those accounts? No, we can't do that, right? And then like 8 hours later, we can just lock out all the accounts. None of you are network people, huh? Okay, that's how this works. So because they got rid of all the infrastructure types a long time ago. We don't exist anymore. They need us again now because AI and quantum computing. Also process. The idea is that we always go to think that it's something that's really difficult. Go to the simple thing first. Keep it, go to the basics. Think about like what the next logical step is, not what everybody wants to jump to do. And remember, this is about you having the voice, you knowing your stuff, and then being willing to step up and say, hey, let's just start with number one. So options, we talk about it. Don't overlook things. How do we ensure the safety of water supply before restoring the service? That's a good question. What if when we turn the water back on, or what if, I'm gonna say this was a long shot, but what if the whole point was for us to turn the water back on without the appropriate spool up time, and then thusly destroying either part of the system or contaminating the water? What are our backup systems? How do we activate them? Right, so you'd think that the water company or said named company would have these things thought out ahead of time, but most people don't. Like, have you thought through what happens if you run out of gas on your way to work in the morning? Those of you that still have gas vehicles. Right, so you go, so I've got three littles that are insane, blinking because that means I need to be saved right now, but so I've got three littles, right? And so if we stop, if we get a flat tire, right? My tire, and yes, I was a Marine, so like I've already thought through all this whole thing, right? So flat tire means to me, I have to find a place on the side of the road that none of the three of them is gonna get out of the car and get it, because there's so many movies, right? And it has to be a place on the side of the road that's far enough away from the street so that when I go to the back of the car, I can still get good view of the rest of the car, because there's Tennesseans are not the best drivers. Okay, it is what it is. Now, if I stop and because my car doesn't have a spare tire, right? Because it's a Volvo, it has like this little tube of gassy stuff that you gotta plug in, and then it's gotta right? And there's no place to put a spare tire, even if I wanted to put a spare tire in the back of the car. So then I'm like, okay, did I remember to put that tubey thing in the back of the car so that if the tire goes flat, that I can inflate the tire? Okay, I got that. Oh, but guess what? You also have to elevate the car, because you can't have this flat tire on the ground when you put the thing in the side of the car, right? So this is a bunch of stuff, because you think through these things when you're trying to convince yourself that you're gonna make it to the next day with three little girls that, as you can imagine, whose mom's a Marine. They test me a lot. I don't win. But like, those are the things that you're thinking about. Why don't we think about that for things as impactful as our tech? Right? Like, think about what happens if you get to a gas station in the middle of nowhere. You need gas, but the network's down. How do you get gas?
Start cash in the wallet.
I still have cash in my wallet. Yeah, don't do that. But if no one's there,
Siphon it from the tank.
of which car?
No, the tank in the ground.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. What was your MOS? We're gonna talk later. You have to think through these things, right? Like, what if your electric vehicle runs out at the mall? Like, what if? These are the what ifs, right? Like, when you think about like the things that are important to you, what if something was taken away from you that you needed, which during the AT&T building bombing, you could not get a cell phone call out anywhere. I know, because I drove it just to check, anywhere from Cincinnati down to Atlanta. Because this was a single hub. Like, the only one for the entirety, they took out FEMA. They took out so if you're trying to call your mom, your cousin, you're working from home, it was Christmas. Like, it was Christmas morning during Nobelian too, that's why, yes. Christmas morning during Nobelian 2, thank goodness for being able to work virtual. I'm on the call, looking at the news. They're like, are you paying attention? I'm like, no, bomb went off in downtown Nashville? I'll call you guys back, right? Could it have been a cyber attack? Yes. Does it matter? The effect is still the same, right? So restoration and recovery, proactive thought process, activating the things that you can, doing the things that you can do with the resources that you have. But more importantly, thinking about it before you have to act on it, right? So then how do we communicate and maintain trust? So there's a whole bunch of other stuff here too, right? How do you communicate and maintain trust? Well, if you're the water company, the bar's kind of low, right? I mean, we just gotta be honest, like Metro Water, the bar's kind of low. They don't get paid enough. Their infrastructure is pretty much radio towers. They do their best. Nashville has a hub, right? Single hub. You call that number, it's literally, they say, if you need your garbage can picked up early, call that number. If you need a non-emergent police officer, call that number. If a power line is down, call that number, right? That is a central hub. It has increased the quality of life for so many Tennesseans. It is the single point of failure. Quite literally the single point of failure. If you have a family member that needs to go to dialysis or someone that needs regular medical attention, if you have someone in your family that uses a insulin implant that uses the network, the AT&T outage was significant. Right? I'm still calling it an outage. It is what it is, outage. Significant. And the other two outages, plus the Google outage that day, also significant. But if you can't get past the level of safety, because we haven't asked these questions, and is it really my aunt who's like 80 something? Is it her job to be like, okay, if the power goes out, although she would have thought of that because like power goes out, right? If the internet goes down, how do I get to my appointment next week or tomorrow or, you know? So who should be doing that for them? I mean, it should be like the people that are paid to do it, but like, it's gonna be us, right? And it should be, because we can do it and we can do it better. So communication's always gonna be a big thing. At this point, everyone that works for Metro Water in this tabletop exercise with me is like, how do you know all these things? And I'm like, oh, we didn't even do the prioritization of resources exercise yet. Okay. Right, because there's steps, but like, this is simple, right? This is a 3-hour exercise technically where you go through your entire systems. At the end of the day, you come out with a communication plan. You come out with key takeaways. You come out with all kinds of things that you didn't have before and the ability to double check all of your processes. And guess what? Now, because of large language models, you can take every single one of your processes, all of your procedures and your standard operating procedures, SOPs, all of your customer documents, making sure that you have the paid version, potentially enterprise, not one that will leak. Do your research and homework. You can dump those documents into one of the language models and you go, hey, what is our first step during X? And it will say, and you will prompt it appropriately, give that one away, you know, hey, Greg, whatever you call your language model. Hey, Greg, act as a first responder and tell me what our process is when this goes down. It will come back. Oh, and identify the source and the page and location of the document that you took that information from, right? I kid you not, put in like one organization's like 5 or 6 things. It will come back with 6 or 7 different answers, none of which are accurate, but you'll know then this is where we need to fix it. We have the technology, right? But you know, secure it. So then you at the end of this like day of exercises, technically somebody's mad at somebody else, right? Like the OPSO doesn't like the data center manager, the facilities guy's mad at everybody, physical security is eating popcorn in the back. The guy that calls himself insider threat is just like, I don't know which team to sit with, right? Both the red team is like losing their minds because they want to go hunt something, right? Your blue team's like, that's not in the manual. Why didn't we know that? We don't, that's a vendor. Okay, cool, right? This is what's happening. And at the end of that day, this is like 3 hours, right? Because, you know, they didn't throw any chairs this time. At the end of the day, they're going, man, this one. We need to do this, and this. And now guess what? The real people, the operators, have the ability to go, hey, business, you know, you want to build that thing next year in this place? we might need you to invest in X, Y, and Z and bring in this vendor because they're cool and they know how to do this thing with the APIs. And stop using wireless because it's a threat, unless you're encrypting things, right? You have all of that. You have everything that you need. And sometimes they're happy, but sometimes they're not, right? So that concludes the tabletop exercise. The whole point being back to manifesto, right? You have to be proactive. You don't have to be smart. You just have to do, right? Be proactive, do the simple things. Tabletop exercise is about like, it's not about like pointing out the flaws or like blame throwing. That's one of the rules of engagement. It's about stress testing the systems that you've built to protect yourself and your business in a way that allows for communication, collaboration, and honestly, education of the entire organization. Like, yes, Elizabeth Stevens really enjoyed it when she was doing a tabletop exercise, and the guy that was in charge of the thing that showed up late was like, no, that would never happen. And I go, oh, really? Hey, can we get Bob on the call? Yeah, he's waiting for a call. Hey, Bob, you want to talk to him or should I? Oh, yeah, go ahead. He's like, hey, Bob, it's so-and-so. He's like, oh, hey, sir, I haven't seen you in a while, a long time. They talk, chat. And he goes, hey, Bob, so I need you to go get the key out the locker. And he's like, yeah, I got it. And he's like, but it's not locked? He's like, no, the door's not locked. And he's like, it's never locked. And he goes, oh, well, Elizabeth, I guess I was incorrect about that. Why? Because no one goes to we went to the data center, obviously. We talked to the data center people. Nobody goes to check, right? So, and that's a win because we didn't get like, to be up, in all fairness, there was some social engineering that I had to do there because like, he's the kind of guy that might like lose his crap on a regular basis. And I did enjoy it, yes. But the intent wasn't for him to go, man, they got me. The intent was to go, oh, snap. We are all working for the same goal. I had a blind spot for whatever reason, right? And then he was like, why do we keep the door open? Because I said it for him. I go, the door needs to be open. You just need to know that it's open. And he's like, well, why do we need the door open? And then we proceeded to tell him why the door had to be open. He's like, oh, this is a bad rule. I'm like, that is a bad rule, but also you're not protected by that door, right? So benefits, because reinforcing defenses, we also have to defend ourselves against our partners. The tabletop exercise allows you to do that in a way that brings people along collaboratively, as well as challenging decision makers and processes without necessarily having to be the bad guy. It's really cutting off. Okay. So I'm going to blame Zoom. So cybersecurity isn't just about the IT department, right? We talked about that collaboration. It's kind of more like a neighborhood watch. That's my watchtower right there. It's about all of us using our individual strengths, especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure, to protect the things that are most important to us, right? Some of us can do that with tech. Some of us can do that with not tech. There's no separation, right? There used to be this huge divide between analog and digital. Physical, like for non-engineers, analog means you can touch it. Somehow digital meant that you couldn't touch it, but that's not even true, right? So now we're in the space where like my kids don't know the difference between something that does touch and doesn't touch, from a perspective of like, oh, sound is a wave and a particle and a, right? Because that's what the kids are doing right now. But like, we're the ones that are still needing to understand that it doesn't really matter whether the attack's coming from a cyberspace, which is hectic, or if the attack's coming from physical space. We still got to know how to react to it. So even if your business unit or the organization is saying, hey, there's no way we're going to get attacked. If you can walk down to that, like my spaces, data centers, water, that kind of stuff. If you can walk down to the data center and unplug the thing and get the same effect, it's the same effect. The cat's still dead, right? It may have been an accident, but the cat is still dead. And so for all of us, tabletop exercises, call it out. This is the cheapest way to upgrade. It is almost, we're about to be in that era of insurance pop off, right? It's due diligence and it's cheap. You just got to get the people in the space with the commitment to talk about the things you need to talk about. So then the other part of this is like, how do we outmaneuver because we're back to cyber, right? How do we outmaneuver the attackers? How do we get faster, stronger, smarter? We can't. They got a couple of great things going for them right now. The persistent attackers, the nation state attackers, the hacktivists, they got a lot of great things going on for them. They have zero time for any of the crap. They are diverse because they're like, if you can do it, not only do we want you to do it for us, but we're willing to come snatch you to make you do it for us. They're like, oh, the tech's not consistent. We don't care. It's about the commodity and the end state. There's no ethics. Some of the things that they're using this stuff for, and I'm not just talking about like organized crime or why everybody's picking on China right now, I don't know, but we're talking about the normal bad person that preys on children. Like everyone has the capacity, and we are not engaging in a way that allows all of you to have that same capacity. That's also what the manifesto is about. Every single one of you having, and your kids and your grandparents, having the ability to do this for yourself. You can only outmaneuver the attacker if you know yourself better than they know. And that's about knowing your organization, knowing your systems, knowing your biases, knowing that your first answer is always going to be containment. We first got to make sure it's an actual investigation. It's an actual incident, right? Was that too heavy-handed? Okay. Whew. Okay, so Nashville's water supply, it's not just the target, right? It's kind of a symbol. Because we're quite literally in the middle, like I know I'm a nerd, right? But like engineering, literal, quite literal engineering marvels. Like the TVA and what they did with the dams, flooding people's homes, all of that stuff is the equivalent of what the Egyptians did with the pyramids, right? Put it in America, much younger. I would like to say there were no slaves, but I can't really say that kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, indentured servitude and all that jazz. That is what that is, right? It is the infrastructure for a good portion of the 80s that was the primary target for Western missiles, okay? Not just because of the water, not just because of the plants, but because of all the connectivity that comes through here, right? So when we're talking about like, okay, what is important, what is different, what are the things that we need to look at, what are the things we need to do? The fact that most Tennesseans actually have water right now is insane. But that same ingenuity, like the amount of work, the amount of like foresight, forethought that took, is the same kind of ingenuity and effort that we should be putting into our cyber protection and to protecting that critical infrastructure, whether regardless of who or where we think the attack is coming from. Okay, so this is the time where I say any questions. But I'll say this too. If you have no questions for me, I actually have questions for you. Questions? Okay, let me ask my questions.
What, will you tell us why the one slide was funny? Slide number 2, I think.
Maybe after the recording is off. Yeah, maybe a little. I'll go back to it though, so you guys can take a look at it for sure. Okay. All right, so what are the specific action steps that you can take to implement a part of the manifesto? What's something that anybody can do to be a good cyber warrior?
Make a plan.
Yeah, plan.
Make a plan. What else?
Know about that.
Have a backup. Mhm.
Know your environment.
Boom.
Exercise the plan.
Yeah, tabletop it. How about that?
Learn the process and trust.
Uh-huh.
Good partners.
But check the process. Check the process. Okay. How can we ensure that collaboration continues among stakeholders?
I mean, you can leverage natural events. So, everyone thinks they got a great disaster recovery program. Sometimes like an unplanned power outage Then 24 hours later, certain business units are still recovering, and you can kind of leverage that.
Well stated. It's quite literally the best example. Leverage the space and the things that matter to that business unit, that organization, to help them be better.
Have you ever worked with companies that do something like, tabletop is one form, like we've done them here, we call them game day, or but if it's cyber related, like it's a purple team exercise.
Yeah.
Do you see companies or clients of yours regularly practice whatever their threat modeling should tell them is a likely attack vector, and this is what they should be doing to get better?
So the question is, do I see a large number of people or organizations in the ecosystem practicing the process of evaluating their own processes? The answer is no. Hence the manifesto. But en masse, I think there are people, so it's changing, right? Like everyone talks about this divide. There's a huge gap between the number of cyber professionals that we need and the number of cyber professionals that we have. But that's not actually true. The gap is between what people who are in the profession want to call cyber professionals and the skill sets that are actually needed to be effective in the space, right? And so if you look at the way that the successful organizations that I've seen operate, there's never a space, especially around the tabletops or the game days, where if the executive assistant goes, hey, but this, people don't listen to them, right? If it's the person from marketing goes, but this thing, and the entire room goes, that's amazing. Why didn't we think of that in the first place? That's a good organization. Unfortunately, a large number of the organizations that consider themselves security forward, I think is the phrase, in the ecosystem anyway, they have a tendency to tunnel vision and isolate. And when you do that, you get all of the biases that come along with being a human, and you miss a lot of the things. So there's plenty of time. I got really good at learning how to tell people that their stuff sucked. And not getting kicked out. That's the part, because I still say it sucks, and then now I'm just not getting kicked out for it. In a way that allows for them to see that it's not an opinion, right? Like the idea is you only care about the things that are going to be important to you. And if the storytelling about, hey, we didn't patch this, fix this, or update this doesn't align to the bottom line for the majority of the company, then it doesn't matter. That's going to fix itself soon from a cyber perspective across the field. But the real question for you again is, do you want to be the person that's counting on that company to protect your data, protect your water, protect your kids? And many of us don't have that choice right now. Does that answer the question without calling any specific companies out?
It does.
I would say that everyone, there's very few that I've seen do this well, including our armed forces and some of our allies. But when the teams start working on it together, the growth is almost exponential, right? It is nothing to come up with a scenario, right? You don't even actually have to understand the technology, right? What's a SCADA? Developers like, what's the point of that? But it is what it is. So like, the whole point is, if you know the impact and the thing that you care about that you need, the technology doesn't matter. Especially if you can think with a logical mind, or at least a creative mind, and go, well, maybe it's this instead of that, right? Because some people in this room let somebody in the room walk us down the path of, there's nothing we can do except for the electronics, right? There's always another way. Like, there's never only two, there's always a third way. If, blue team, purple team, green team, and then we come back to the red. That was a good question. Any other questions? Because I got more questions. I got one more question. Okay, what are some of the available resources that you can use to help you, like, be proactive in this fight? I mean, other than the manifesto, other than Elizabeth Stevens, you know, I gotta.
Peers.
Yeah, peers in the environment, in the local area.
There's an organization
Yeah, was.
and stuff too. Then you've got all of the standards, right? There's meetups. Doesn't matter if you're a red team, blue team. Typically, the red teamers are always nicer to people that come asking questions. I don't know why that is, but especially in this area, that's what I found in Nashville. There's a, I can't remember the name of the group, but they're a bunch of like serious hackers, and that's saying something considering me, but very welcoming, very, like, people want to share. That's the new thing, right? I haven't met in the last 5 years, haven't met a single cyber person that doesn't want to share, right? There are some old and crotchety people. They're not like old like us and crotchety, but like, but this thing that we're doing right now, it's amazing, right? And it's not about, and with AI, it's not about what you know. It's not about what you think you know. It's actually about how you think and whether or not you're willing to ask the question, right? So that's why I love the salespeople, right? Because even today, like my other partner was like, she's like, I don't know anything. She literally knows nothing about cybersecurity. And she's like, I know nothing, but that digital guardian thing, we need to make sure the product does that. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm gonna do this. And she's like, you lost me at something about a workflow. Okay, right? So it's not even, but I guess if there's one thing that you get out of this entire conversation, other than find me on LinkedIn and say that you like my speaking, is that like every single one of you, like the point of the manifesto, it's literally, it's quite literally part 0 in the book because of 0 day, because D-Day, it's part 0 in the book because the manifesto is the whole reason that we're here right now, right? And that means that every single American, and I know I'm in Tennessee, so militia, but every single one of us has a right to our data, especially in Tennessee with IP litigation law. Every single one of us has a right to the resources that the government and our taxes pay for. But right now, none of us is really being given the right to protect those resources. And a lot of bad things are happening that we're just kind of having to feel for. So if you want to protect your digital landscape, there's a lot of things you can do. There's 5 different principles in the manifesto that you look at, but this one's the cheapest and the easiest. Tabletop it, TTX it, ask the questions, inspect what you expect, and then write down everything. You don't even have to write it down anymore. Turn on your Firefly or your Otter or whichever AI you got taking notes for you, or dictation. Get those notes and then implement them as changes. And that's gonna keep you out of trouble. And that's what's gonna make a difference when you start automating it and like propel your businesses forward. And that'll help to get you as close to advancing on the bad guys. Any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.